You've hit play on TSC Highlights, short-form media from the Screen Companion podcast. I've got writer, director, and childhood pal of mine, Ian Clement, joining me to talk about budgets in filmmaking and how mindful directors like him have to be on smaller projects. So you've been directly involved in getting financing for some of your stuff?
Not as much as my producers, but yes, I have.
What new challenges did you come up against once you got more money and had to think like a producer?
If I was doing a no-budget thing, the whole thing looks gritty and we're shooting with a lot of natural light to begin with. That becomes the aesthetic for the film. When I didn't have a budget, I didn't have to make that decision. I was like, well, that's already the look of the movie. Now it's like, oh, it all has to have this polished look. We're shooting with like a red camera. We can't have one scene of amazing lighting and then another one not. As a writer, you want to be like, well, all of these are important. But then you start going through it. Do I really want to sink all my budget into this tiny scene that's going to cost this much and might sacrifice some other things?
When the budget shrinks, what do you feel like is the first thing to go?
Probably scenes that are going to require more lighting. Like, does this scene need to take place at night? Can't they have this conversation outside in the sunlight? Because that immediately is going to cut down on budget.
And the shooting schedule, right?
Yeah, shooting schedule will be easier. You're not going to have people working all night, possibly having to pay overtime. But it's really like the fact that you won't have to rent a generator, especially if you're shooting outside at night. It can be very difficult, very expensive to light an entire street or something like that. Second biggest thing to go is locations. Does this need to take place in a bank, or you have characters having a conversation in a restaurant? Because once you start moving around locations, then you have the obstacle of moving the crew, transportation costs, and then you have time being eaten up that's not shooting when you're traveling somewhere. Those things go first, I think.
What do you think is a major strength for you finding places to save money?
I would say a lot of the time it's set design, not just set design, locations themselves and props. A lot of the times you wrote something and you've just written that like, okay, and they need this briefcase. And that's just the first thing when you're writing, that was the first thing you thought of, and that's what you put down. And then later, do you need that briefcase? They might even be ready to go out and look for one. Wait, do I need the briefcase for this? Well, this character wouldn't actually have a briefcase. Actually, maybe they would just carry this
shopping bag.
Something more specific to that character that's actually also a cheaper option. When you're just writing, it's not that tactile. There'll be things that you thought were well thought out. You just assumed it would take place in this kind of restaurant or whatever. And I find that with independent filmmaking, you end up having to prove each and every little detail. And a lot of those times it's because of the budget. And you'll end up saving budget and making something more unique and interesting.
Any line items that tick you off? I wish we didn't need this. Why does this have to be part of the process?
Definitely lenses are annoyingly expensive, and you'll be constantly asked, do we need to have this lens or that lens? Other things like, I would say the electrical stuff, something before I was making stuff that I wasn't really professionally lighting. I would just think, oh, whatever location I pick, we can just shoot in there. Well, the wattage of this building is nowhere near what we need, so we're going to need to hire a generator. These very heavy things sometimes are very large. And then you've got wiring now going through. I generally like having long shots where you have the characters entering the space and then going and sitting down wherever they are all in one shot. And now it's like, okay, we've got to hide wires because the building, we couldn't just plug in our lights in there. That is something that really blew me away when I first got a budget. We actually had a couple scenes at the beginning where I was like, oh, I think this should be fine. And then 1 minute into shooting, we shorted out the entire building. And now we have to get electricity from the next building across and spend 2 hours just getting all the electricity working.
So that's something you would just love to have a magic button you could press and solve that problem.
You see all these drone cameras. I would love to have some, like maybe some drone lights extremely bright lights that just float around and just go exactly wherever you need them and don't make any noise. I'm waiting for that innovation.
I think the insurance rates would go up on the actual production because drones are flying around hooked up to wires and they accidentally get wrapped around people's necks as they're going along and strangling people.
That and a lot of the lights are extremely hot, so you have burning hot things whizzing around. There's some kinks we gotta work out.
Hey, I didn't know we were doing pyrotechnics today. We're not.